Greetings, everyone. We would like to welcome you to our live webinar presentation, Cybersecurity, Balancing Risk and the Member Experience. If you were on an airplane right now, you need to listen to some safety instructions before the plane takes off. So buckle up and please pay attention to these brief items of note before our webinar takes off today. During the webinar, all attendee lines will be muted. To ask speakers a question, on the left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a blue Ask a Question box. Simply type in your question and press Send. To listen by phone, please reference your webinar login instructions. If you need any other assistance during the webinar, please contact our Health Web Summit office at 209-577-4888. The rise in digital health initiatives present more vulnerabilities than ever before to patient data. As a result, healthcare organizations are experiencing a record number of data breaches and suffering millions of dollars in fines, settlements, and operational losses. Today's discussion will pinpoint ways to reduce the risk of a data breach, explain the necessary steps to validate and verify member information, and identify the ingredients for a strong multi-factor authentication strategy. Our speakers today are Aaron Benson and Courtney Timmons. Aaron is the Director of Market Planning for LexisNexis Risk Solutions Healthcare. Ms. Benson focuses on the development and execution of strategic planning for identity management and social determinants of health solutions. She came to LexisNexis from Deloitte Consulting. Ms. Timmons serves LexisNexis Healthcare as Market Planning Specialist. Her focus is on the development and execution of strategic planning for cybersecurity and risk defense solutions. So, without further ado, our speakers are now ready to begin.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Charlene Serrano with LexisNexis. As today's moderator and on behalf of LexisNexis, I welcome you to today's program. Now I would like to introduce today's first speaker, Aaron Benson.
Thank you, Charlene, and good afternoon, everyone. Courtney and I would like to thank you for taking the time to join us today and considering some new ways to address your organization's top priorities around cybersecurity and member engagement. We'd also like to extend our thanks to MCOL for the support in facilitating today's session so we can have these important discussions. We hope today's session will lead to continued conversations, and our direct contact information will be provided at the end. So why is it that we're all here today? With a growing number of data breaches, the need for cybersecurity and physical security keeps CIOs up at night. At the same time, value-based care and the rise of consumerism are driving a need to provide members with a quality experience without introducing a lot of friction into the process. These two needs are fundamentally at odds. Cybersecurity calls for more secure access gates, while member engagement calls for more ease of use of online portals and other healthcare services. So specifically, over the next hour, we want to discuss how market trends have led to this need for balancing data security with member engagement. We'll then discuss two key ways to address this challenge. First, by using a unique member identifier to create a golden record for each member, and second, by placing appropriate layers of defense in front of member and proprietary data to ensure only the right individuals are gaining access. We'll conclude today with our thoughts on how these efforts achieve the desired balance. Courtney, I'll turn it over to you to explore these impactful market trends.
Thank you, Aaron. When exploring the challenges health plans are facing in 2019, there is no denying that technology has played a primary role in how members are interacting with their health plans. In turn, it is requiring health plans to take a more proactive role in protecting their systems from a breach while maintaining a great member experience throughout their medical journey. In this first section, I will dive into market trends and highlight the challenges both health plans and providers are facing in balancing member engagement and data security. Members are increasingly taking control of their health through the engagement of member portals, and this is a trend that is continuing to grow into a norm. By engaging in member portals, users are able to view and get answers to coverage questions, track claims and account activity, locate providers and services, find health advice, manage their member profile, pay bills, and much more. And this is a trend, and this trend is on a rise. According to Health IT, 52% of individuals have online access to their health records. 72% of millennials stated that they prefer to share health data and manage their care via a mobile application. An increasing number of health organizations are investing in serving omni-channel members, looking to open or log into new or existing accounts, change passwords or member information, make payments, or access claims. This omni-channel model allows access through both physical and digital channels. Members are accessing both their data and care benefits in person at hospitals and care centers, through call centers, online via email, computer, or tablet, and through mobile applications. As you can imagine, it's not only member access that health plans are concerned about. For every access method or channel into a system, there is a desired user and a potential vulnerability point for fraud. While members are accessing their data, employees and vendors are also logging into systems at other access points, and those access points need security as well. Protecting organizational data and the identities of members is not only the responsibility of the health plan, but it is required by several federal regulations. As digital healthcare has become a new norm and members are accessing medical data in a variety of ways, this has resulted in more attack points for hackers. According to the Crisis Management Group of Edelman Public Relations presentation at HIMSS this year, healthcare organizations have become primary targets for 3 reasons: outdated systems, low layers of security, and healthcare companies are statistically known to pay ransom. This is interesting when you contrast it with a recent survey we commissioned where 58% of healthcare organizations responding stated that they believe the cybersecurity of their online patient portal is above average. Of course, the most obvious issue with that is that over half of the organizations statistically can't all be above average. But even more so, we know from market trends that fraud is on the rise, and hackers are attacking systems in an effort to steal member identities, obtain fraudulent health care or prescriptions, open new lines of credit, facilitate blackmail or extortion, compromise corporate IP addresses, and more. As the ways in which members access their data becomes more sophisticated, so too do the ways in which hackers are finding ways to commit fraud. In 2017, there were 477 U.S. healthcare breaches affecting 5.6 million patient records. More than 1 in 10 new account openings are fraudulent, with 60% of those accounts being created using a mobile device. Call center fraud is up 113%. A record 1 billion bot attacks were seen in Q1 of 2018. There's been 202% growth in login attacks since 2016, and 88% of all ransomware attacks were against healthcare organizations in 2017. Because as I mentioned earlier, healthcare organizations are known on the black market to pay. So what's the solution to this balancing act? Regulations continue to promote patient and member engagement through things like the 21st Century Cares Act, My Health E-Data Initiative, and Trusted Exchange Framework and Common Agreement. At the same time, they push for safe and secure environment for all users through regulations such as HIPAA, HITECH, and the FACT Act. This year, we held our 2nd annual focus group in partnership with the College of Healthcare Information Management Executives on top priorities for healthcare technology leaders. Here are a few takeaways from this focus group. Although these industry tech leaders have a lot on their plate, earning and retaining patient and member trust, whether it be by keeping information safe, maintaining accurate and complete records, or providing a personalized and meaningful healthcare experience, was said to be paramount. Cybersecurity is a key priority for this group, with participants admitting to their increase in use of multiple layers of security, including one-time passwords, biometric screening, and knowledge-based authentication. There's a growing understanding that as fraud schemes are becoming more and more sophisticated, Every point where a user can enter a system needs to be appropriately secured. These experts acknowledge that when fraudsters are successful, it compromises patients' trust in the healthcare organization, it increases costs for the healthcare organization if they have to remediate a breach, and potentially leads to patient safety risks if any other patient's health data is altered and caregivers then act on bad information. Not to mention, as one of the participants pointed out, patients will go somewhere else if they don't trust that you can take care of their data. As you consider these market trends and potential ramifications of a breach, I would encourage you to ask yourself, what conflicting challenges your organization faces around data security and member engagement? How are you solving these challenges today, and what could be done better? We believe that identity is the key to solving the challenge of balancing member engagement and data security in today's digital economy. We believe it's about getting to know your members, maintaining accurate data at all times, and leveraging that data and linking technologies to create a multi-layered security approach, filling the gaps within your organization's workflow that leave data vulnerable. Identity management and proofing in tandem with new technological innovation allows organizations to perform intuitive linking of data points to the accurate identity, leverage cross-industry analytics that allow organizations to determine if an identity enrolling in your plan actually exists and if all of the identity information is accurate and belongs together. And lastly, monitor transaction activity across a diverse array of industries from financial, retail, insurance, and government, using machine learning to build analytics, provide fraud intelligence, and track fraudulent behaviors and schemes. The first step in this approach is understanding that we must assess the risk of both the physical and the digital identity attributes of each and every person looking to gain access to your portal, file a claim, change contact information, or any other high-risk transaction being performed. Having the ability to assess and link data points, such as the username and email addresses, their biometrics, geolocation, and a person's digital behavior and reputation across industries, and linking them to vehicles, phone numbers, addresses, dates of birth, relatives, and associates, is key in protecting your member population. In order to protect their data, you have to know who to grant access to and be able to verify their identities. Knowing your members will allow you to validate that the right users get access to their information, while keeping fraudsters out and providing insight into who is accessing your site, mobile application, and/or portal, no matter where in the medical journey a member or fraudster is trying to gain access. Here's our first polling question. Is your organization addressing the challenge of balancing member engagement and data security?
We'll give you all a few minutes to answer. You'll see the possible options are yes, however, we're more focused on member engagement. Yes, but we're more focused on data security. Yes, we're equally focused on both, or no, this is not a focus area. We're curious to see where you feel like the emphasis is within your healthcare organization. So it's looking like, Courtney, the results are pretty evenly split between focused on data security and then equally focused on both. What are your thoughts on that?
That's great. Achieving balance is certainly a shared challenge in the market today, and with good reason. We are so used to investing in technology that provides the best care and medical experience for our members that we often fail to acknowledge that technology and innovation as a double-edged sword. It helps our members while also making their data more vulnerable. Keeping accurate, up-to-date data and investing in the necessary methods of securing that data then becomes a key part of the member experience by serving as a good way to maintain trust with your members. In the next several slides, Erin will discuss the first step in getting to know your members and the importance of maintaining what we like to call the golden record.
Thanks, Courtney. Those results are really interesting. I expected more of a balance, but it's great to see that data security is so critical. So recently, we've seen an increase in healthcare organizations stopping and asking the question, even if I validate a person's identity correctly, how do I know that individual has been provided access to the right record? This issue stems from the fact that there are often duplicate records and systems. The users may be linked to only a partial file. At other times, records contain outdated member data that challenges the linking process. So that's why we're recommending using a unique, member-specific, non-social security number-based universal identifier as an important first step to data security. The idea behind this is pretty simple. Organize the data in your systems first in order to best protect it. After all, healthcare organizations can't effectively control who has access to data if a member's data is split across multiple records or can't be located based on outdated information. As Courtney mentioned previously, we believe identity is the key to achieving the right balance between data security and member engagement. It's important to establish that the identity on the record really exists versus being synthetic. It is important to verify the member's identity information and validate they are who they say they are before granting access to healthcare systems and services. The healthcare organization should determine when and how to communicate with the member, ensuring updated contact information is maintained so that they can best engage them. The member's information should be protected from fraudster access. And, as we discussed in this section, a foundational step is for healthcare organizations to aggregate the many data points about each member into one location linked together by a unique, persistent member-level identifier to create that one golden record about the individual. The mismatches in duplicate records happen throughout the process of linking data elements to the member record, and they're introduced at multiple points in a workflow. With data being captured remotely through telehealth offerings and portals, as well as in person or over the phone through traditional means, you have members and employees entering data into systems all the time. When humans enter data, they can not only mistype the data in error, such as transposing digits in an address or phone number, but they can also enter data that is inconsistent with other records for that patient. So, for example, do they enter the person's nickname one time and their legal name the next time? Do they put a middle name, a middle initial, or do they leave that field blank? Even when we standardize within an organization, there may not be standardization across organizations. So, for example, systems will often standardize addresses, but they might not use the same rules as other systems. Often, this results in those systems not being able to match the similar but different data elements to link them to the same member record. Manually entered data and even standardized data can then result in records that are dissimilar enough that the records can't be associated to a single member record without manual intervention or the use of third-party matching tools. When healthcare organizations then go to link records together, direct matches are not always possible. Especially for those members enrolled in care management programs, keeping track of all the medical and claims records coming in from different systems can be complex. Mismatched and duplicate records start to be introduced. Mergers and acquisitions, which are becoming more common in the industry, as well as the use of health information exchanges and other cross-organization sharing of data, just compound these challenges. Then there's the issue of data maintenance. Even if the initial record is entered exactly correct, data quality starts to degrade almost immediately. People move, they get married, they change their last names, they get new jobs and change email addresses. This makes the linking challenge more complicated because you're now trying to link records with varying degrees of updated information to the right person. For that reason, systems must have an ongoing process for maintaining quality member data. So at LexisNexis, we approach the healthcare industry from the point of view of how data can help to solve problems. To do this, we recognize that for any healthcare organization to be successful, data has to be complete, accurate, timely, consistently maintained and delivered, valid, and relevant. We recommend the use of a universal patient identifier to match and link records, which is also the critical first step to enabling all of these interoperability initiatives that we've been hearing about. Healthcare entities that use a universal patient identifier will be most successful at accurately and consistently matching and managing member identities within their systems, ensuring that only access is granted to a portal, the identity accesses the right record when they are getting access. As an example of how this works, LexisNexis aggregates data, and then we use our patented linking technology to assign that data a unique identifier. This is what we call a LexID. It's our version of a universal patient identifier. Healthcare organizations then send us basic contact information from their patient records, and we append and return these LexIDs. We can also append updated contact information. This allows healthcare organizations to identify where they have duplicate records and merge those records. In the examples shown, traditional linking methods might not have revealed that Mike R. Jones, Michael Jones, and Rob Jones are all actually the same person. These three records can now be collapsed into one, so a care manager can understand Mike's full medical history in one place. When choosing a unique identifier, we do not recommend using a social security number or other number that's tied to external processes. Our LexID, for example, is not really a meaningful number in and of itself to an outsider. By selecting a number that doesn't tie to something like a social security number, it significantly mitigates the risk of exposing an individual's personal information or having their identity stolen. In order to optimize member record matching and linking through automated approaches, you need two things: a vast referential database and sophisticated linking technology. The reason we could say that Mike Jones and Rob Jones are actually the same person is because we can match that data to public records that show other common elements that would identify they are the same person. The same could be said if one of the records had an old address and one had a new address. Referential databases make that type of matching possible. Sophisticated linking technologies make it possible to apply statistical analyses to the matching process and account for variations in how data is entered. We look at how unique different combinations of elements are to achieve confidence in our matching. For example, as you can see on the slide, we can say Jane and Jan are the same person because their first and last name combination is very unique for the Atlanta area. There are many John Smiths in Atlanta, so we wouldn't make that same assumption. When choosing or designing a patient record matching approach, these are the key components for you to consider. Now that we've discussed the importance of a golden record, I'd like to hear your thoughts on universal identifiers and our next poll question. So our next poll question is a universal identifier important to the future of healthcare? Your options are yes, I agree we need to begin utilizing a universal identifier. The benefits outweigh the risks. No, I don't think we need a universal identifier. The risks outweigh the benefits. Or maybe you're still deciding if a universal identifier is needed. We'll give you a few seconds to respond. All right. So as the responses are coming in, we're pretty clearly at almost 78% in agreement that we do need a universal identifier, and obviously based on what we just shared with you, we agree, so that's great to see. So once you have your golden records of data, meaning you have well-organized, consolidated member records, then you'll be best positioned to link the right user to the right record. That leads us to our next recommendation, which is putting the proper data security protocols in place to validate identities and maintain the trust of your member population. In this next section, we'll discuss the various layers of security, highlight strategic analytics and innovative technology, and present some key questions to ask when designing and strategizing your multi-layered security approach. We'll also walk you through 2 example workflows that will show you how these solutions can be effective in achieving balance. Courtney, can you tell us more about the importance of data security and key considerations for selecting a multi-factor authentication solution?
Yes, Erin. As you know, healthcare systems are under attack, and breaches which appear in the headlines are preventing members both young and old from adopting the usage of member and patient portals. A quarter of overall patients state data privacy concerns for not using the portals, and patients over the age of 65 have security and usability concerns that limit patient portal use. As we indicated earlier, users have a reason to be concerned. Fraudsters are penetrating health systems at an increasing rate in order to enroll in health plans fraudulently, receive benefits, and establish false identities to sell on the black market. So what can you do to help your members feel safe and secure when interacting with your portal, site, web application, or calling into your call center? The answer we recommended is multi-factor authentication. Now that we have complete, accurate, and up-to-date information on our members, we are ready to leverage the data along with technology to build a multi-layered security approach to implement throughout your workflow. The goal here is to build the right level of verification and authentication across workflows so that the right members get through with little to no friction and the fraudsters are kept out, hitting several security blocks due to the detection of synthetic or manipulated identity information or their lack of proof that they are who they say they are. On this slide, we present a number of identity verification layers that can be implemented and layered in ways that allow your organization to achieve the best balance possible for your organization. It is important to keep in mind that not all layers are necessary for every transaction type. The layers in a multi-layered approach should be customizable to your specific workflow and use case. And lastly, to achieve balance, the key is pairing both low friction and high security solutions. I will briefly review each layer at a high level, and in the following slides, we will walk through 2 workflows, which will allow us to take a deeper dive into how these layers can be effective when leveraged. The first layer presented here is contextual, based on how a member interacts with your site, portal, or mobile application. This layer is a great first line of defense and is completely frictionless to the member. It analyzes the device being used to access your site or mobile application and the behavior of the person as they maneuver through your site. The second layer is based on how well the member's information compares to others. Here is where public and proprietary information paired with linking technology is leveraged to determine if the input data being presented is representative of an actual identity and if the information belongs together. The third layer leverages something you are. Through biometric technology, it uses voice recognition or fingerprint scans to authenticate an identity. The fourth layer is contributory, leveraging what others know about you. It collects data from other organizations and other industries to monitor when or if an identity has been seen throughout the network, how frequently it's been seen, and if the identity was involved in any past fraudulent activity. Next is possession-based. It leverages what the member already has, such as their email address, a phone number, or a government-issued ID, to verify their identity. It tests whether the ID is real or if the email or phone number receiving a one-time password is valid and belongs to the person requesting access. Lastly, there's knowledge-based, leveraging information that only the true owner of the identity knows to authenticate their identity. With all of these various options, how do you know which one to choose? Prior to jumping into workflows, I want us to set the stage and present some questions to consider when selecting the right security layers for a workflow. First, you should assess the effectiveness of the solution. How quickly and easily will fraudsters find ways around the layer? Various types of authentication methods should be used to cover different types of security vulnerabilities. How much will this layer cost to implement? How will the layer interact with your existing system? While multi-factor authentication is important, you do reach a point of diminishing returns. It is important to implement solutions that serve different purposes, targeting different types of fraud throughout your workflow. How will these layers working together impact your member? Will it provide value? Does it cause complexity and unnecessary friction to the workflow? We recommend putting the no to low friction solutions up front in the process and introducing solutions suspicious identities are facing additional scrutiny before logging in or completing a high-risk transaction. Lastly, What will be the impact on business processes, call centers, customer service, and staff? As with all new technology implementations, processes and training will be required to make the most use of the new multi-factor solution. These are all things to consider when determining which solutions to implement into your workflow. In the next several slides, Erin and I will walk you through two common workflows for a new account opening and a login password reset use case. Here, we not only lay out our recommended layers of solution, but we also highlight the member's journey through the process, the friction levels they'll face, and the core security questions that each solution will help your organization answer when determining whether or not you should grant access. Erin, will you walk us through the first example?
Thanks, Courtney. I'd be happy to. Before I go through the example, though, I just wanted to remind you all that you can send questions to us via the Ask a Question box at the bottom, and we'll be happy to address those at the end, but please go ahead and start sending them now. So our first example shows a new account opening use case. In this workflow, we recommend leveraging contextual-based data, which is analyzing how a member acts, analytics-based data, which is based on how a member compares to others, and knowledge-based information, which is what a member knows. One key takeaway is that while we have a large variety of solutions to deploy, we've elected to select only 3 for this use case that will be the most impactful. In the first step in the new account opening workflow, the member accesses the site via a remote device such as a laptop or a mobile phone. Our goal is to get the real member set up with their account as quickly and easily as possible, so we start with a security check that occurs entirely behind the scenes. By assessing the device and the user's behavioral patterns, we're trying to answer 2 questions. First, is this device being used to access this portal secure? This step looks for ways of filtering out bots and other technical threats. We also ask, is the user attempting to gain access to your portal exemplifying suspicious behavior? For both questions, we're looking to recognize anything about the device or the behavioral patterns of the user that would raise suspicion. During the next step, the member completes some basic information about themselves, such as entering their name, their address, or their phone number. And once this information is submitted, that kicks off a second layer of defense. This time, the multi-factor authentication solution compares the user's input data to public record files to confirm the identity is a real person, that the inputs match to that identity, and that there's not a high fraud risk with that identity. This layer of defense requires the user to complete a form with their information, so it includes a moderate amount of friction into the process. At the last step, we validated the user's device and identity, but now we want to make sure the person creating the account actually is the person whose information they supplied. So to do this, knowledge-based authentication quizzes can be provided, asking the user questions that the real person should easily know, and a fraudster would have to look up, but not before the system timed out. So let's look at each of these steps in a bit more detail. In step 1 of identity proofing for a new account opening, we're evaluating how the user acts to determine if they should be permitted to open an account. A colleague of mine likens this step to the analogy of a car pulling up in front of your house. The first thing you do is peek out the window to judge whether you recognize the car. Is it suspicious, or is it a car you recognize? Is the driver recognizable, or are they concealing their features? In the cyber world, this is the same as device detection and behavioral assessment. Your devices and how you use them are part of your identity, and there are hundreds of attributes you send every time you make a call or sign on to an internet site. This includes aspects like the device ID, the time zone you're in, the browser language you're using, your IP address, your GPS location, and more. Moreover, the way a fraudster handles a mouse or interacts with a portal interface is different from the way a real user would. Things like your device ID, your location, whether you copy and paste or manually fill out fields, all these things contribute to a digital fingerprint that can be associated with you. It can also be used to detect fraudsters. For example, where a call is coming from is being passed through a proxy server, so technology can detect if the same device claims to be calling from Texas and then 2 minutes later claims to be calling from Georgia. Further, technology allows us to detect a bot versus a human simply by looking at screen behavior. Like, are they going in straight lines or curves? Is it scrolling? Or things like our click speed. Different elements like that we can look at, which differs for a bot use versus a human use. The benefit to evaluating a device or behavioral patterns is it doesn't cause friction for the user because it occurs behind the scenes. Your members can then feel confident and safer knowing you are providing them with security without inconveniencing them. An additional benefit is that once a device is determined to be safe, that device can be associated with users, so future requests for access coming in on those devices can be more easily verified. In step 2, after you validate the device and behavior of the person, it's important to verify the person's information. If we consider the car analogy from before, once you've determined if the car looks suspicious or not, you still want to make sure you know the person inside. If you can't see them well as they approach the door, you might ask for more information before letting them in. You can picture someone standing at a closed door and calling through it, who's there? Who is it? This next step is data security is equivalent. During account setup, users are typically asked to enter basic information about themselves so you can link them to the right member record. To answer the question, who is it, technology can compare the information they enter to public records and determine if the name is real, the address is deliverable, the phone number is active, that the date of birth matches the name, and so forth. By verifying the identity elements, we can be more confident that the identity is real and not likely to be fraudulent. Now that you've confirmed the person's device and behavior seem safe and you verify that the identity is a real person, there's a third step that is recommended: authentication that the user is who they say they are. This can be easily tested by asking questions only the real person should know. We've probably all experienced these questions before when we've applied for a loan or an insurance policy. These are the questions you get, like what county do you live in, which of the following people do you know, and which of the following addresses have you lived at before. You would immediately know the answers because you lived it, you experienced it. But a fraudster is going to have to look it up, and that takes time. This final step authenticates that it's really you that is trying to access your member record, and that should increase the trust of your members in your healthcare organization. With these 3 layers of defense in place, real member accounts can be created with a high degree of confidence. Next, Courtney will walk us through another common use case that happens on a recurring basis.
Thanks, Erin. Our second workflow walks you through a login or password change use case. In this workflow, contextual-based data, analyzing how a member acts, contributory data based on what others know about you, and possession-based information, what a member already has. In the first step of the workflow, the member assesses the site via a remote device, for example, a tablet, a laptop, a mobile phone. Here we're asking ourselves, is the device being used to access this portal secure? Do I recognize this device? Is it a returning device? As Erin mentioned in the previous workflow, this layer is completely frictionless to the end user and serves as a great way to determine the next step in the authentication process. In the event that the member attempts to log in from an unrecognized device, we have a couple of recommended options for step 2. In preparation to send the one-time password, the member selects Forgot Username and Password. Then the member must choose whether they would like a one-time password sent to their phone number or their email address, and based on their response, they must input a phone number or email address. Now we must ask ourselves, does the phone number belong to the user requesting an OTP? Does the email address belong to the user requesting access? Here's where we introduce contributory data. Leveraging that email address provided, we are able to search industry networks to find out if fraud has been associated with that email address you are sending a one-time password to, or has anyone else detected something suspicious about the email address requesting an OTP? Due to the fact that majority of people have their phones or emails at their fingertips, we consider this to be a low to medium friction for our end user. Based on the success of the phone or email verification, the last step in this workflow is for the member to receive an alphanumeric code in real time and enter the code into the system for authentication. Let's dive a bit deeper into contributory-based data, or what others know about you. Contributory-based data answers the question, have other organizations experienced fraud or suspicious behavior with this associated identity? Where else does this identity appear in my system or with other health organizations? Has this address been associated with financial, insurance, or industry fraud? Contributory based data allows you to take your internal network and test it up against the external network of known fraud in an effort of preventing fraud before it happens. With the interlocking of network activity, members can benefit from monitoring technology to receive alerts when their identity information is being used in transaction cross industries. Lastly, I will talk about possession-based data, leveraging something that the member already has. In our login password reset workflow example, we spoke briefly about sending a one-time password via SMS to a mobile phone or via email. But there are other forms of possession-based verification. Here, we can ask ourselves the following. Is the government-issued ID being used real? Is the email address being used to interact or send one-time password valid? And is the phone number you're calling or sending a one-time password to valid? Aside from a one-time password, organizations have the ability to authenticate government-issued identification, for example, licenses, driver's licenses, or passports. They do this by performing dozens of different text and image-based tests, including but not limited to color, accuracy, placement of elements on a card like a portrait picture, signature, state seal, hologram, patterns and microprint, and other security features expected for a known ID. That ID image is cross-checked against thousands of document templates from hundreds of countries and territories worldwide to test for accuracy and validity. This method of verification could be best utilized when picking up a prescribed controlled substance or when enrolling in a health plan for the very first time. Images of identification can now be captured via webcam, a document scanner, and/or mobile phone taking pictures of technology such as facial recognition and matching algorithms to compare a selfie taken by the end user at the time of document authentication to the portrait image that is extracted from the submitted document. Let's look at our next polling question. How many forms of verification is your organization currently using? Is it 1, 2 forms, 3 layers of detection, or 4 or more? So it looks to be right now that 70% are using 2 or more forms of authentication, which is great to see. But oftentimes it's not about having the most layers or the highest security layers within the workflow, but as mentioned, it's about analyzing your existing workflow and highlighting the gaps where potential fraud might occur. So although 2 layers is great, you might need 3 or 4 depending on what access methods and gaps you're trying to fill within your workflow. So you should leverage the questions discussed on today's training to fit the right solutions in the right places. This will allow you to fill those gaps in a way that makes sense for your organization. I will now hand it over to Erin, who will summarize the keys to creating balance and provide you insight into next steps should you be interested in learning more on how this can impact your organization.
Thanks, Courtney. Before we review the keys to creating data security and member engagement balance, I wanted to share 2 final points from the cybersecurity survey we commissioned recently on healthcare organizations. It was interesting to see on our polling questions that most organizations are using 2 or more different types of layers. In our survey, 93% of respondents said they were using username and password to protect member and patient data, but less than half were using more sophisticated methods like knowledge-based authentication and device assessments. So that had me asking myself, would I feel safe knowing my medical and claims data was only protected by a username and password? I don't think I would feel safe, which is why multi-factor authentication is so important. The second interesting finding from that survey that I wanted to share was that 65% of healthcare organizations stated their patient identity management budget would stay the same or even decrease over the next year. This was shocking to me at a time when fraud is up and a breach can cost organizations over $400 per person to recover from. So multi-factor authentication not only protects the member, but also the healthcare organization. So now let's take a final look at those keys to achieving the balance between data security and member engagement. To achieve balance of patient engagement and data security, you should assess both the digital and the physical identity of your members. Members access your systems and health plan services in a variety of ways, and it's important to have multi-factor authentication methods that match the method and point of entry. The same can be said for access points for employees and vendors, although we've primarily focused on members today. You should also create and maintain a golden record on each member. This helps you to better protect data by linking your members to their complete records, and it improves member engagement by helping you to see a holistic view of your members in one place and better keep their records up to date. Finally, you should implement the right solutions at the access points within your workflow and verify and authenticate the identity of your members when they are accessing your systems and health plan benefits. It doesn't mean utilizing every verification authentication tool every time a user tries to perform any type of transaction. It means matching the data security tools to the use case and balancing high and low friction solutions. We always recommend having 2 to 3 layers of security in place with step-up authentication options because there are different types of fraud, but also being efficient and thoughtful in which types of security to deploy to optimize the real member's experience. So with that, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Charlene, to open up this session for questions.
At this time, we would like to answer a few questions from our audience, and I do see some coming in. If you still have a question, you still have a few minutes, you can go ahead and submit that. The first question that we're going to share today, it says, as technological advances accelerate, how can we ensure that older patients who have fallen behind the technology curve still have access to their medical information?
Yeah, this is a great question, and we get asked this a lot. I think the key ways that we can do this are with those, basically those security levels up front, like device assessment behavioral patterns, where you're not really expecting the older generation to interact at all. And then what we will do with things like knowledge-based authentication questions, is particularly when a population tends to trend older, like Medicare populations, is we will build more time into those surveys to give them longer to read the questions and respond. And then there's always the option to send them to call centers so that they can interact with a real individual in order to be able to get their information that way. So the other trend, though, that we're seeing is that older generations actually are becoming more comfortable with using the online system, so expect that to be a trend that continues, but certainly we want to be able to continue to support the different needs of the population.
Okay, we have a few more minutes here, so we'll entertain a couple more questions. The next one is there any difference in how payers and providers are approaching cybersecurity?
I don't think there's much of a difference with how payers and providers are approaching cybersecurity, as the access points or access methods for both patient portals and member portals are very much so similar. And also both seem to have call centers that require those multi-levels of security when authenticating a patient call or a member calling in to gain access, whether it be to their lab results or whether it be to claims data or personal information. So in terms of how patients and members or providers and payers are securing their patient or member portals, similar in terms of how they're implementing these processes.
Thank you for that, Courtney. I have one more question, and we still have a few minutes if there's any others that want to roll in. So, which groups in an organization should be responsible for achieving this balance?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the answer has been shifting over time. When we did the focus group with our CHIME CIOs and other executives, what we found is that in the past, data security has been pretty much the sole responsibility of the IT group, and member engagement fell within other parts of the organization around member enrollment and basically care management programs. But we're starting to see those groups collaborate across to achieve that balance between wanting to put data security in place, but also make it easy for users to get access to portals. So the answer is it falls in multiple places, and it's becoming more of a cross-organizational initiative to help find this balance and do what's in the best interest of members.
Thank you for that, Erin. It looks like we have another question. So how are we going to get to a nationwide universal member ID? It has not happened so far.
Yeah, that's a great question. As part of the Chime Focus Group, we had the same discussion, and a lot of our participants are starting to lose faith in the idea of coming up with a national patient identifier. So what we really have proposed is, as an initial step, coming up with what we're referring to more as like a universal patient identifier, where it may not be a national standard, but it can be used to help with interoperability. And basically, if you're comparing it to a referential database, then you're still able to take in data from multiple locations and assign an identifier. And as that data moves to different organizations, they can do the same. And over time, as different organizations start to adopt similar universal identifiers, they'll start to see that interoperability increasing. And hopefully that will lead us to a point where we feel more comfortable with the national patient identifier. I think right now we're not willing to commit to what that should look like because we're still learning the best methodologies around this, but it's certainly becoming more sophisticated over time, and I would expect that as organizations start to adopt some form of standardizing this, it will eventually lead to a position where we can look at doing it nationally.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any more questions coming in. We want to thank you for joining our webinar. This will conclude today's presentation. Thank you again for your time, and please watch out for our follow-up communication.